In 2006, the Nintendo DS was taking off. The launch of the DS Lite had firmly cemented it as a replacement for the GBA lineup, and Nintendo's new casual brand strategy of the DS Lite and the upcoming Wii got a whole new audience interested in Nintendo's products. As the Wii approached launch, Nintendo began work on a brand new DS model with hardware that would be a closer match to Sony's PSP. With mobile 3D graphics chips still being in their infancy, Nintendo turned to the GPU company Nvidia to collaborate on the development of a custom processor. But as years passed, this Nvidia DS disappeared, with the next DS model being an incremental upgrade using largely the same chips as the original. When the DS's true successor arrived in 2011, it used a chip by the Japanese company DMP, with the public never seeing anything but rumors of an earlier Nvidia variant. This is the story of Nintendo and Nvidia's lost 3DS prototype. Welcome to RGD. When Nintendo released the DS in 2004, they didn't have any concrete plans for a follow-up or if they were even going to do one at all. The DS was an experimental product that was positioned as its own product line separate from the GBA, and with major GBA titles and new console revisions still being released well into the DS era, the DS's eventual dominance wouldn't be immediately apparent. The DS gradually gained momentum over the next couple of years before the release of the DS Lite in 2006 gave the DS lineup a massive bump in popularity due to a sleeker design, an increasing lineup of exclusive games, and a surge of interest from the casual audience brought in by the Touch Generations games and the Wii. Once it was apparent that the DS lineup was Nintendo's future, they started work on its next generation. While Nintendo had traditionally designed their own graphics hardware for handhelds, usually in cooperation with a Japanese chip manufacturing partner like Sharp or NEC, the complex hardware that would be required to match the capabilities of the Sony PSP demanded more than what Nintendo could do in-house. So in 2006, with modern smartphones not yet having taken off and high-end mobile processors still in their infancy, Nintendo decided to look abroad. Nintendo entered talks with the American chip manufacturer Nvidia, who was already well known for their PC GPUs but had no previous experience working with Nintendo and little experience with embedded GPUs. Together, they started a project to develop a new custom processor called the MG20. The origins of this name are kind of vague, with the 20 implying that there might have been an earlier variant of it already in development with or without Nintendo's involvement, and Nvidia never used the MG prefix for any processor models before or since. One possible guess is that Nvidia started developing a mobile graphics processor and then reached out to Nintendo as a potential customer. This could also mean that the MG in MG20 stands for mobile graphics or mobile gaming. Nvidia did briefly attempt to enter the embedded GPU market prior with a short-lived product known as the GoForce, a line of graphics chipsets used in cell phones and other mobile devices from 2003 to 2007, such as some Motorola Razr phones and the infamous failed handheld the Gizmondo. So it's possible that the MG20 was derived from a GoForce chip or even just a rebranded version. The public was completely unaware that these negotiations were going on behind the scenes at the time, as Nintendo hadn't disclosed plans for a new DS model. This information only surfaced years later when, as part of the Nintendo GigaLeak, an archive of internal files related to the early development of the 3DS was released. These files show that the MG20 was quite far into its development by the end of 2006, with a boot program already having been written for it, meaning that either a working emulator or prototype hardware already existed at this point. This was a pivotal point in the development of the DS lineup, as according to an Iwata Asks interview, late 2006 was when the DSi project started. It's unclear if the DSi was meant to be a stopgap leading up to an all-new DS model that used the MG20, or if the DSi's creation led to the MG20 ultimately being scrapped. Eventually, the DSi was released in late 2008 with still no news from Nintendo about a full-fledged successor to the DS. Earlier that year, Nvidia made a second push into the embedded GPU market with the release of the first Nvidia Tegra chip. In August of 2009, news reports began to surface about a rumored DS successor that would use a Tegra chip. The rumored details were a mix of information that matched the specifications of the first Tegra, information matching the final 3DS, and information which didn't match the final 3DS, making it hard to tell if this leak was legitimate or a very lucky coincidence. But since the GigaLeak included 3DS SDKs that go as far back as 2009, we can cross-reference these rumors with information from these early SDKs to check their legitimacy and learn more about the early development of the 3DS. From this, we can see that at least one of the details from the leak, the claimed 64MB of RAM, was actually planned at one point in development before being bumped up to 128MB for the final product. More importantly, the time period surrounding the leak appears to have been a major turning point in the 3DS's development, as this is when a new revision of the 3DS's prototype motherboard was made, known as the TEG2. Despite the name suggesting a connection to the Tegra, this is actually terminology which Nintendo's handheld engineering division had been using since at least the GBA to refer to prototype revisions of consoles. The TEG2 revision is believed to be the first revision to have stopped using the Nvidia chip in favor of a processor called the Pika 200, developed by the Japanese hardware company Digital Media Professionals, or DMP for short. The Pika 200 and DMP as a whole are relatively obscure outside of the 3DS, with the Pika 200's most notable uses outside of the 3DS being some digital cameras released around the same time. It's unclear why Nintendo chose to drop Nvidia in favor of DMP, but due to Nvidia's notorious reputation as being a difficult company to work with, it's possible that negotiations fell through. In the early 3DS SDKs found in the GigaLeak, we can see evidence that Nintendo was still using the MG20 right up to the creation of the TEG2 board in August of 2009. SDK files mention an MG20 EMU platform, which could be a software emulator or a prototype 3DS development kit using the MG20, similarly to the emulator series of development kits for previous Nintendo handhelds. So what happened to the work that Nvidia had done on the MG20? Looking at the LinkedIn page of the project leader for the original Tegra reveals that he was previously the leader of the MG20 project, which he describes as a high-performance / low-power multimedia SoC with ED-RAM designed for a handheld game system consumer. Due to this connection, it's possible that the MG20 evolved into the first Tegra, with the first Tegra model being called APX 2500, possibly as a reference to it being a successor to the MG20. A few years later, Nintendo's relationship with Nvidia reignited when in 2014, Nvidia approached Nintendo again with their prototype Tegra X1 chip. After comparing it to the custom chip that Nintendo was planning to use for their next handheld at the time, Nintendo eventually decided to go for the Tegra, leading to the creation of Project NX, the console that was later released in 2017 as the Nintendo Switch. The GigaLeak also revealed source code for the Tegra X1's boot program, showing dates going as far back as 2006, indicating that 2006 was most likely the year when the Tegra was born. For more information about lost pieces of gaming and tech history, check out the RGD Twitter at RareGamingDump and the RGD website at raregamingdump.ca. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.